Welcome to Coleman Report Live. I'm Bob Coleman. We're talking Main Street and the small business lender who helps it grow. Mr. Riosti's in the house. John, thank you for joining us. And Lance Sexton, sorry about your woohies, whatever you call them down there in Arkansas.
Bob, Alabama is a formidable opponent. And we made a run of it in the third quarter, and then we forgot to fill our tank with gas.
They brought in the second stringers there. So anyway, hey, let's get to it. We got a lot of stuff. Number one, we're going to do this poll question. What percentage of 7A loans are approved by SBA Express or processed and approved by the lender as SBA Express? Lance, that's a better way for me to phrase it.
Yeah, and Bob, I'm surprised by the answer.
Lance, you know the answer. What is it?
43%.
I would not have guessed that.
I am fairly surprised, and we've got this big push for doing smaller loans, and your SBA Express are smaller loans. So that's a good indication of what's going on in SBA lending.
And of course, that's a blatant plug for Lance's webinar tomorrow.
Yeah, we're going to talk about how to properly, primarily we're going to focus on the differences between the standard 7A closing and an express closing and some of the things as a closer that you need to think about. So great webinar. Would encourage you, everyone, if you've not signed up, to hop on board.
John, I want to thank you for the plug. John, I know this is, I know you love to follow numbers and you're in stats, and I know you follow New Tech. What's going on with them?
Very interesting. Well, first of all, they are engaged in what they seem to indicate, and what I certainly hope for their sake is the final stages of a bid to acquire the National Bank of New York City. It's a small bank. I'm surprised. When I learned that they were buying this bank, I'm surprised that it even exists. It's I think a $200 million bank based in New York City.
Wow.
I figured any bank there would be bigger than that. Yeah. But it was last August of 2021 that they their offer was accepted. They're going to pay I think it's $20 million or about $20 million in cash. And that's off the top of my head, so forgive me if I'm wrong. But the key is they've offered, the bank has accepted, and it's now just a matter of gaining the approvals from regulators. And this is a sticking point for New Tech. It's also been a sticking point for others around the industry. There are a number of deals that are sort of stuck in neutral, if you want to call it that. So it's not that the regulators are picking on New Tech. But the company last week, the CEO, Barry Sloan, had a press conference, and they said they're still confident this is going to be approved. It's just that it's going to be approved later than they initially hoped. Now they're talking about a fourth quarter approval. And I think the important thing, once it does get approved, and I think the company is very confident because they've also they're beginning to select partners to build their banking platform. So they're confident enough to start making some investments in that. But once they do become a bank, they have access to deposits and other low-cost funding. And just what they say is, it makes it easier for them. Right now they have to raise money in the capital markets, and it's more expensive, a little bit more difficult, I would imagine. This way they can do it with deposits, and that puts them in the same boat, say, as a good boat to be in. Pick your major bank and credit union SBA lender. They can, and the reason that's interesting is because they're reporting, and this is, I'm sorry to drag this out, they had their best quarter ever in terms of 7A production, $223 million, and they're on their way to their best year ever. They set an ambitious goal, and they say they're going to hit it, if not surpass it. And that was $750 million in 7A production in the 2022 calendar year. So it doesn't match up with the fiscal year, which is just closed. But, they've, according to SBA, they've become the second largest 7A lender in the country.
Wow.
I did listen to the press conference that the CEO, Barry Sloan, had last week. I believe it was Thursday. And I thought it was interesting that, he was, trying to find some comparable companies to compare Newtek, the bank,
Yeah.
forward. And the one that he mentioned was Live Oak, which is a pretty interesting one
Wow.
off the top of your head. So
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Obviously, during the Great Recession, a lot of non-bank lenders, and CIT comes to initially to my mind, is they found out they cannot fund 25-year SBA loans on 30-day commercial paper. And the commercial paper market dried up. So having access to the Fed funds obviously is a huge advantage to a non-bank lender. Yeah. There's pros and cons, but I would imagine you would want to be on the bank side as opposed to the non-bank side. John, I don't know. What do you think?
They say, as the people who operate the company, that over time, the benefit they get from being a bank is more valuable than being a business development company. Investors like the dividend.
Yes.
And they like that they're getting a significant dividends from Newtek as a business development company. What Newtek is saying, over time, the value of the shares will increase to the point where that will exceed, the dividends you're achieving. And when you just talk about overall value, there's more overall value as a bank than a bank in 7-8 lending.
Let's do this. Let's extend an invitation to Barry Sloan. He's always been very, very fair to us, and I don't know if he thinks we've been fair to him, but let's extend an invitation to him and have him comment when we get closer. When do you think this is going to, if it closes? Well, first of all, do you think it's going to close? The regulators are going to bless it?
Based on, I do, and based on a couple of things. Number one, I don't think if they know better than anyone else what's going on, and if they were concerned, they wouldn't be making the investments they're making now in the infrastructure they need to be a bank. So that to me is a big signal of their confidence, and they've been very careful to stay on the good side of the regulators, so they're not saying or doing anything that would perhaps draw adverse attention to themselves. And the second thing is, as tough as the regulators have gotten about merger and acquisitions, none have been rejected yet. So, and I don't know why this one would be.
Well, and this is a logical next step for Newtek. I actually, earlier in my career, worked for Newtek for a little bit, but Newtek offers SBA loans. They offer insurance products. They offer payment processing. They offer a full array of products. So becoming a bank is just a natural next step for this company.
Yes.
Very good. The only blemish on Newtek's record, obviously, is they were the parent company of BankServe. And when all the employees, or I shouldn't say all, but a majority of the management was all indicted and sent to jail, they obviously weathered that. And so that, I don't believe, will be an impediment. If SBA had concerns about that, they would have popped their POP license a long time ago.
Oh, I don't think it has much of an impact on them now. And Newtek,
I agree.
They're a great SBA lender, so
it stopped at Carriaghi. It didn't go up the chain, and they were at the forefront on helping solve the problem. So I don't think that's going to be a problem at all. I don't know if you're following this story, John, but I found this fascinating. This just came out from the IRS, which says, hey, if you have a loan that is not forgiven due to misrepresentation or omissions, bam, we're going to tax you on that as taxable income, Lance.
John and I were laughing about this prior to the...
Laughing? Well,
because what is the IRS going to do? Is there going to be a special checkbox on the 1040 that says, I got forgiven on my SBA loan, but I shouldn't have been. Check. I want to be taxed on it. Check. So how are they going to figure this out? I don't understand. Now, maybe the IRS has some magical portal of information that I'm not aware of.
Well,
But
I think
now, do I think somebody that should not have been forgiven should be taxed? I don't disagree with that. I just wonder how in the world are they going to determine who got forgiven and shouldn't have been?
Well, I think what they're going to do, Lance, is they're going to say, hey, you got a loan, but you never got forgiven on that loan. Therefore, we're going to tax you on that.
Well, so if you got forgiven, but how are they going to know you shouldn't?
I'm not.
Well, and the other thing, Bob, is does this mean if you're declined by SBA, suddenly you're able to write off the expenses associated with the PPP loan on your tax return?
Go ahead,
You
John.
know,
Well, I was going to say that's a very good point Lance just made. But I think what we're seeing, and I would like to ask the Treasury this, and I think I will ask the Treasury this. There's been a lot of attention paid to the 87,000 agents who the government plans to hire, the IRS agents, and
They got to have work to do. Yeah.
they're going to have work to do. But I think one of the key things, and I think Congress, has made this clear, is they do not like the way, the programs were taking advantage of idle.
Right.
And
I think, I agree.
and you have some others too. It wasn't just idle and PPP. They're talking about unemployment.
Fraud.
That's beginning to get out of our sphere. But let's just focus on idle and PPP. That's a lot of fraud, and they don't like it. And it takes manpower, to use that term, to figure out, to go after those people. And certainly the local governments can't do it. They're not equipped. So I just wonder how many people are going to have their loans looked at in retrospect, to decide were they actually, legitimate. Maybe loans, will we be at a point where loans that were forgiven are going to be reviewed, and maybe they might change the determination.
Or loans that were not forgiven will definitely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Anyway.
typically somebody who has committed fraud and indicted does not end up getting forgiven, but submitted for guaranteed purchase.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's an interesting, do I agree that somebody who shouldn't have been forgiven that did get forgiven should be taxed? Yes. I don't have a problem with that, but how do you make that determination is.
Oh, wait a minute, Lance. But then now you're going down the slippery slope that says I got a $100,000 loan and I'm paying it off, and all of a sudden loan proceeds now become taxable income.
Well, and that's, well, if they're paying it off, Bob, that shouldn't be an issue here. But
I think the key thing here is that they're going after loans that are already forgiven.
Yeah.
So there's got to be an element of review in that, and that's what I was thinking. It sounds like they're going to begin looking at these loans, and obviously looking at the bigger ones, not the smaller ones.
And there are not just going to need to be some people. There's going to be a unbelievable number, because we're working on a project right now related to PPP, and I've got an 18-person team helping me, and I'm sitting doing the math trying to figure out if we can complete it. And that's just one PPP lender. That's not everybody. So I look forward to hearing more information about this.
Well, and then if you want to have your head explode, guess what the next step is? The states will then want to get involved and get their piece.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So it's a fascinating rabbit hole that we're living in. And then our final story, John, I don't know if you're following this, but there are a number of lawmakers on the Democratic side who say, hey, what's going on here? Are you aware of this?
I saw this press release as well, and this was last week.
Right.
I think it was Wednesday. They brought 7 business people to talk about. These are people who got their loans, and I guess it was determined later that the size of the loan was too big, that they got more PPP than they should have.
I can give you a pretty direct perspective on this. And this just as a fictitious example, a company gets a $2 million PPP loan. They spend the money according to the rules. They spend all $2 million of it on payroll. They submit for forgiveness, and the SBA goes in and says, okay, we're going to review this because it's a $2 million loan. And SBA goes back and looks at the numbers and says, hey, wait a second, you guys did not calculate the loan amount correctly. You should have only gotten a $1.6 million PPP loan. All of a sudden, you have a small business saddled with a relatively short term, albeit at 1%, significant balance loan that has huge payment requirements. And a lot of this happens. Now, they have the right to appeal and present their information to an administrative judge who then decisions it. But I believe that, this didn't happen on a huge percentage of the loans, but there were a number of loans that were reviewed, and SBA said, you didn't calculate the loan amount correctly. Your loan amount should have been this. Thus, we're only forgiving the amount it should have been, not what you got.
That is pretty much precisely what the businesses found themselves in. There were some pretty sort of dramatic stories, and I wish I had the names in front of me, but there was a woman business owner who said because of the situation she finds herself in now, and Lance was exactly right, 1% doesn't sound like a lot of interest, but when you got to pay it back, and I believe it's 2 years, the payments are significant. And she said her monthly payments are $9,000.
Yeah.
And because of that, just put off all kinds of personal things, her car, her home, she needs home repairs, she needs repairs, and she's trying to save her business. But, that's the thing. They said that there are about 300,000 small businesses, and by that I mean very small businesses in many cases, that find themselves in this position where they have this chunk of their loans that wasn't forgiven because of the error. And what Congress would like to see, what the businesses would like to see, is that you call these good faith errors and just forgive the loans.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. Both of you, I appreciate it. Great conversation. Lance, I will be out Friday. You got the con.
It's going to be crazy on Friday, guys. Tune in.
Thank you for joining us today for Coleman Report Live and for supporting America's Main Street, one entrepreneur at a time.
Have a good afternoon.
Thank you for joining us today for today's episode. If you like today's content, hit that subscribe button to subscribe to our channel and click that bell icon to get notified about our latest videos. Thank you again for joining us today and for supporting America's Main Street, one entrepreneur at a time. Catch you next time.